Chris?
Hey, Will, sorry. I was saying hi to you, but I realized I was on mute.
All good. I like your shirt.
Oh, thanks. I got that when we were visiting with the Kennedy Space Center down in Florida.
Very cool.
It's
Yeah, I've
good.
been
Yeah.
meaning to drive down to Boca
Yeah.
Chica, uh, down in South
Texas?
Texas. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Cool.
still like 4 hours from us, but it'd be fun to go down there.
Yeah. I'd love to go to a launch. I've never been to one, but it would be cool.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, they can't plan those with a whole lot of confidence as to when they're actually going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes it difficult.
Yeah. Hey, Ira.
Hey, Hero.
Hey, how's everyone?
Good,
Doing
good. How are
well.
you?
Hello.
Hey, Nikos.
Hi there.
Hey, Radu. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Good. Ready for the weekend. I don't say that a whole lot,
It's
but
Thursday.
this week's been a century.
Yeah.
Hey, Will, I'm just listening in to see if there's anything to support security discussions for some comms related stuff. So don't mind me
Great.
if
Oh,
that's okay.
no, not at all. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for it. Waiting on uh Jesus to give him a ping. Bryce, if we don't hear from him in a minute, we might just roll with you as the star of the show this week.
All right. Sure. He did send a message in that chat, said hopping on a minute ago.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah. So must be having a Zoom issue.
There we go. What's up, Jesus?
Hello.
Nikos, if I could ask you to go to no camera on, then I can change the settings so that it just hides the non-camera people and record all the three of us during the conversation. Thanks.
Done. All right.
All right. Perfect. So, welcome to Core Dev Corner. This is the second episode, so we're going to be talking about testing and hardening for the next couple of. We've pulled together like a 3-part series, and so testing and hardening is pretty interesting because it's like this meta working group that came together a little over a year ago, and so it's been like sort of gone through a couple of iterations where how formal do we want to be with it, and I think it really kind of makes sense that it's this substrate almost, or this umbrella over all of the working groups. And so it seems as if there's representatives from that meta working group within all of the other additional working groups. And so we're going to talk about a series of different like testing strategies, and in the coming weeks we'll be talking about fuzz testing and mutation testing. Today we're going to kick it off by talking about the 2.5 readiness checklist and the PoX 4 testing that went into that. And so Bryce, Jesus, welcome. And if you could maybe just kind of give a quick introduction, and then we'll start talking about stacking scenarios, testing coverage, infrastructure updates, chain state migration, all this like really fun stuff. Bryce, do you want to lead us off?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Bryce. I'm staff engineer at Hero. I've been at Hero for 3.5 years, I believe. Started off on the Clarinet team, and then sometime year and a half ago, I switched over to the core blockchain team. And so I'm coming at this kind of with a focus on Clarity, but kind of as a generalist across all of the Stacks core code.
You've also had a hand in Clarity Wasm as well, right?
Yes, Clarity Wasm. I started off the Clarity Wasm group, and then was able to pass it off to some trusted hands while I focused on some of this other core work. And then hopefully I'll be able to get back to that once 3.0 is out. Then we'll refocus back on that Clarity Wasm and follow up quickly with an update for that.
Very cool. And then Jesus.
Hello. I'm Jesus Nahara, or Set Zeus on the interwebs, and I'm the founder of Strata Labs, which is a Bitcoin and L2 studio. So I do a lot of consulting and contracting work in both, Bitcoin and L2s, including stacks, and also have a, Bitcoin product called BitScript. But today I'm here to talk about all the Clarity work that I've been doing in the last couple months, and yeah, excited to share what I've learned along the way.
That's great. So Jesus, while we're talking with you, maybe we start off by talking about PoX 4. So feel free to correct me along the way anyway, at any point. But from the upgrade from 2.4 to 2.5, there's obviously the upgrade with PoX 3 to PoX 4. And so with that, sort of at the heart of consensus, I'm guessing that there's a lot of different scenarios that need to be tested, and in addition to the contract suite. So I first began getting familiar with you and your work through 100 Days of Clarity, some of your Clarity education. And I've seen you just sort of like continue to just level up day after day, week after week, year after year from Clarity. And then I know that like being involved in the Clarity working group, and then learning some Rust, because the demands of testing PoX 4 really required that. Anything that you want to kind of talk about when it comes to like the stacking scenarios that were tested, how you sort of accomplish testing coverage, and some of the means and methods that go into that?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about PoX 4 testing in general, and happy to have Bryce here as well, because he was a really, really enormous part of that effort, and as well as Nikos and the Bowtide and Bowtide Rad 1. But yeah, basically PoX 4 was very, very difficult to test, which led to a sort of distribution approach where instead of having multiple people use one testing framework to get coverage, we opted for basically assigning one framework per person, and then having them achieve coverage in each of their frameworks. And so in general, this was my first time working in Stacks Core, and considering myself mainly a Clarity developer and not knowing a lot of Rust beforehand, I did find that ramp up to be not easy. But it has greatly increased my understanding of how Clarity is written and why it was written in a certain way. But yeah, I'm happy to just talk about the testing stuff in general. I feel like Bryce on his end has a lot to contribute to that as well, because this was actually his second time writing tests for PoX contracts. So, I mean, Bryce, curious to hear, what are your thoughts on how that's changed over the years, or at least the previous versions?
Yeah, so we really took not that there wasn't a focus on safety before, but we definitely took some lessons from the rollout of PoX 2, which needed to be followed up with PoX 3 due to a bug. So that's where we ended up with epoch 2.2, 2.3, 2.4. So we learned a lot of lessons there. And so there was a kind of a step back and, okay, what are we missing in our testing? How can we do this better? And like Jesus was saying, we kind of are covering it from lots of different angles. And big props to Jesus, because he put together this document that kind of covered all these different scenarios that need to get tested and kind of managed making sure that they were getting done. So in addition to jumping into the Rust code and learning to write those tests himself, he also did a lot of organizing for that testing. So that was huge. But yeah, so I think getting this testing both from different people, so different perspectives, different things in mind that you're testing, but then also having some Clarity unit tests written with Clarinet, having some integration tests written in Rust, having some end-to-end tests written like operating against a real reg test environment. It kind of gave us this nice broad kind of attack at making sure we covered all the different areas. So I was really happy with the improvements that we made this time around.
And those are just the traditional tests that we had as well, because obviously, like I mean, the fuzzing test that Nikos and Bowtie did is also just incredibly cool stuff to see.
100%. Yeah.
So when you're looking back at like the timeline from between development and testing, do you have a sense of like orders of magnitude? Like it almost, like from my point of view, just listening to daily updates or whatnot, it almost felt like a 60-40 split almost, like in terms of like the amount of time that took to write the contract suite versus like doing all the testing that you're talking about. Is that a fair assessment? Or
yeah, and I think in general, as I've furthered in my career as an engineer, I think I've realized, like, unfortunately, you should be spending your time most of your time designing and testing, and realistically the least of the time actually implementing and engineering, which is what most people actually find as the fun part. But
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely learning that lesson.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the 60-40 is probably maybe even higher percentage on testing. Especially as we get deeper and deeper, some of these tests, it gets harder to write a test. So there's been a lot of PRs recently where a fix is like a 5-minute change to the code, but then coming up with a test to actually make sure that that's fixed properly and doesn't come back to bite us later takes several days. So I think it's definitely the right way to look at it is to spend the majority of your time getting your testing right and your design down as well. Yeah.
And so, like, if you think about the design and development phase, the testing phase, and then there's this sort of coordination and integration phase that, all of these various chunks of code, if you will, stacker DB, DKG, signer binary, like all of this stuff needs to come together as part of the block candidate and the, the actual instantiation of the update. Could you maybe just help unpack a little bit about the instantiation and migration activation process of like getting this from, my very left curve understanding, getting it from GitHub to like actually deployed to the Stacks node and getting the uptake and seeing, like all of the like how the sausage is made, basically, of making that actually, become activated.
Yeah, definitely. So there was certainly some new challenges in this particular release with the new binary, the signer binary, and then trying to organize in such a way that we can get that signer with as much documentation as possible out to the users that need to test it before it goes live as early as possible, while we're still kind of building things, and doing that in such a way that we're not doing it too early and wasting their time and wasting our own time. I think that was we definitely learned some more lessons there for next time. We also ran into some challenges with Bitcoin testnet, of course, this time, so that slowed us down a bit. But having this environment where we have multiple test nets, some that are just used internally, a really easy way for anyone to spin one up locally on their own machine. That's been huge for testing. And then having a couple different public environments that users can test in. I think we're going to continue to expand on that and maybe have more of this test net that is sort of a semi-stable test net where you have to expect it's going to get reset somewhat regularly. And then the kind of the core test net that hopefully doesn't get reset too often. So yeah, those challenges with timing that with this new signer binary and the new partners that are running the signer, and some of these are big companies that want a lot of time to make sure it's correct and all that kind of stuff. So definitely some new challenges there. The core kind of the core node rollout was pretty similar to previous events, so nothing too major changed there. Yeah, anything to add to that, Jesus?
No, I think I was pretty separated out at that point. That was, yeah. Once PoX 4 got deployed, honestly, I've been recovering little on my end, so, and is part of the signing onboarding as much. Yeah.
Well, and I guess as we start to like turn our attention towards, okay, so we just went through like a really intense and all-encompassing upgrade from 2.4 to 2.5, and we know that we have 2.5 to 3.0 on the horizon. Just curious, like if there's any sort of lessons learned or anything in terms of like the instantiation activation process or the testnet phases, anything that was sort of, I guess, like an epiphany or an aha moment now that you've gone through it, that you'll sort of be able to approach differently moving forward, or that you might even opt to enhance or improve or change moving forward?
Do you want to take
Sure.
that on?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, I would just go back to kind of what I was just saying about the test nets. I think being more aggressive with having, so first being more careful about what we call a public test net. Like we don't want to put something out there too early that people are just going to be hitting bugs and then causing, like we're causing them pain, they're causing us pain. That's not the right move. Of course, if users, like this is an open thing, so anybody who wants to try the network, as long as they know that they're testing on something that is very alpha, then that's fine. The most likely scenario is that you run that locally and then you can do whatever you want with it. But being more aggressive about like just resetting that test net when we need to, rather than trying to recover from various things. I think that was the biggest lesson that I could probably pull away from this rollout. The actual like choosing the activation height and deciding when to do that, I think, releasing anything, there's never a perfect time to do it. We kind of just have to, we pick a target, we try to reach there. If there's reasons why we absolutely shouldn't release by that date, then sometimes things have to get pushed back. That's the way that development goes. But we also know that nothing's ever going to be perfect. So sometimes we have to cut features before that date. So yeah, maybe just some lessons learned there as far as setting expectations and making sure we leave plenty of room for that testing, that additional testing, especially when it involves these outside partners. That's where it becomes tricky.
Then Jesus, like thinking about just the anatomy of the code base that you were most involved with PoX4. So like help me kind of visualize this. So we've got a contract that is it a contract or a contract suite that handles PoX4, and then you've got all of these different stacking scenarios: solo stacker, pool delegate, signer. Like, are those individual contracts or a single contract? And then all the testing that goes into that, I'm guessing that's complementary code that's called from within the contract. How does that all get choreographed together?
Yeah, so I'm happy to say that, at least in my experience, I think I had it was my first time working in Stacks Core, so I think the lessons I learned were a lot. They were intense because I hadn't previously worked in Stacks Core, and so getting assigned work and then ramping up to it without knowing the language was really, really rough. But I think it actually once I started powering through it, which again, I think Nikos was even here for one of my freakouts of not understanding things. It forced me to have such a comprehensive understanding of not just stacks in general, but even how clarity is built under the hood, that I think, it was such an invaluable experience that I think anyone that is interested in learning clarity, it is a fool's errand to not know Rust on some level, which is which an opinion I probably wouldn't have had before working in Stacks Core. So I would say that's probably honestly the biggest applicable lesson for anyone watching this is if you are interested in Stacks Core and either JavaScript or Clarity, learn Rust, because even if you don't end up doing anything in Stacks Core, one, it allows you to read the code and understand what's going on. But two, it changes your framework of thinking in terms of knowing how Rust works and then understanding why Clarity inherits a lot of the behaviors that come from Rust. So,
are there any particular resources that you'd recommend for getting geared up on Rust? Or
there's just the Rust book. There's the Rust handbook, and then I just bothered everyone on the team whenever around. So
that's nice.
Yeah.
There's a series called Rustlings. Did you ever go through Rustlings?
I don't.
It's a good one.
Okay, Rustlings.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the contract, how it's structured. So the PoX4 update was actually not one contract, but 3 contracts that we refer to together as one. And it was, one is PoX4.Claire, which does take care of all the stacking contracts, right? And so, all the stacking paths are taken care of in the PoX4 contract. Then there's the signers contract and the signers voting contract. That has to do a lot more with the generalized Nakamoto updates than they do with actual stacking part that pool C, etc. It has a lot more to do with the signing keys that are used during the stacking period.
Very cool. Great. Well, thank you both for your time, and we're going to be sort of using this as a starting point to talk about some testing, like I mentioned, in the next couple of weeks. The next episode won't happen because of the consensus conference. I'll be attending that. It's here in Austin. But then, after that, on the other side, we're going to be talking with Nikos and Radu about fuzz testing in particular. And then after that, we'll be talking with Aline from Hero about mutant testing. I'm guessing that all of that will be sort of within the prism of some of the code base that we're talking about today, but just testing it from different perspectives. And again, trying to make sure that we, test and harden from as many perspectives as possible to, sort of try to circumvent any unforeseen security issues.
And those next ones should be good episodes because the key there that we didn't, it was kind of a missing component before this team started was like that fuzz testing and the property testing and everything. It kind of helps cover all of the cases that nobody else thought of in like writing manual tests. So it's really huge because obviously we're not going to come up with every scenario that needs to get tested. So that's a whole new branch of testing that is extremely valuable.
Yeah, well, I don't really comprehend a lot of the stuff that they're talking about, so I can vouch it's quite heady and it's new and novel. I appreciate it. All right, well, thank you
Awesome.
both, and thanks for everyone that attended, and yeah, I really appreciate it, and I think that these are really fun, valuable conversations, and I got a lot out of it. Hopefully you did too.
Thanks, Will.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.